So this presentation was originally done as part of a digital nomad bootcamp where I was part of a panel and of five digital nomads, if you wanna call it that, where we discussed digital nomad, the term, what it means to us, and I guess the certain downsides or upsides digital nomadship. Then afterwards, each of us broke out into our respective areas and were encouraged to give some sort of talk or demonstration on our specific expertise. And the idea is these skills lend themselves well to being a digital nomad. And my field was design, branding, and graphic design. So this is the presentation that was done as part of that, and I wanted to share it with you as part of a webinar to see if you can learn something from it. I think there are some interesting ideas in here around how you can get started, not just as a designer, but as a nomadic designer as well. I think we'll get into it, but I don't think there's too much of a crossover in it. I think we still need to be aware of those similar things. So whether you're a nomad or whether you are just a freelancer or even developing into an agency, I think there will be something valuable for you in this presentation. So like I say, the goal is to really give you the fundamental skills to designing, not just on the road, like just designing in general, and it's not meant to be a definitive list, and it's not meant to be the only option, but these certainly give you a head start if you're wondering where to start as a designer. So a little bit about me. My name's Sam. I'm creative director and founder of Jupiter and the Giraffe. We are a brand strategy and design studio. More specifically, we're a nomadic brand strategy and design studio. It means we move across the world. We're traveling between countries, and we are growing a company as we do so. So my role really is creative director. I oversee design teams, I oversee design projects and branding projects, and I do brand strategy as well. So I've got over 10 years being a digital designer and developer. I've got a wide range of skills that I've accomplished over the years, and using that diverse skill set, I'm able to kind of have a very holistic view of different ways of doing things in different design and creative projects. I myself have been a digital nomad for 9 months. It is September now, coming to the end of September 2019. I've been a nomad for 9 months since January, end of January. And currently in Bali. It's my last few days in Bali, and I'll be going to Chiang Mai. So whenever you're watching this, who knows where I am now. And like I say, I'm growing a nomadic brand strategy design studio, which I think is a very interesting digital nomad, or whatever you want to call it. Digital nomad is a very interesting, intriguing aspect to growing a company, and I want to take full advantage of that. So that's a little bit about me, and more towards our travels. I say we, it's me and my business partner, Susanna James. We've only been a nomad for 9 months, like I say, but in that short time we've visited these places. We started in London. We worked a little bit in London. We did a project or so there. We moved to Sydney. We were there for, I think, 5 months. That was very good, very exciting. I love Sydney. Melbourne, we worked in Melbourne for a bit. We've worked in Bali, which is where we are now. We worked in Kuala Lumpur, and we've worked in Singapore as well. And like I say, to add to that list, I'll be in Chiang Mai as of next week. And these are some of the clients we've worked with to date. We focus in on tech, so I think a common thread with these things, with these clients, is really technology. We want to work with really cutting edge technology, interesting technology that's empowering, is empowering the future, is empowering our future, is contributing positively towards our future. So I'm personally interested in space and space travel. but also ethically and globally and climate-wise, we want to support those types of companies and technology that has potential as well. So what is necessary to succeed as a designer? I think there's 4 areas we can look into that I think are fundamental to beginning your career or give you the best chance of survival as a designer. I think if you get these things kind of nailed, you've really got the foundations to be a great designer. So the first one is talent. And this is an interesting one. It's a common, I guess is an interesting one because talent it very much comes naturally. So my questions to you are: do you think creatively? Do you already think creatively? Do you already admire color and composition? Are you looking around and do you see things in a visual capacity, or are you very analytical? Because I think analytics has its place, but I think creativity, we say left and right side of the brain. I think when we talk about the left side of the brain, these are the things that come out. Do you draw? Do you create? Whether that's writing, you can be creative writer, whether that's actually drawing, whether that's filming. Filming can also be a creative outlet. You perceive the world and you interact and engage with the world in a creative format. And how do we define creativity? I would say, well, that's a tricky one actually. So creativity is, I think it's taking one idea and 2 disparate ideas and forming a connection without really much in the way of format or structure. It's you're joining those dots, taking 2 disparate ideas and joining them together. I think that's creativity. And would you consider yourself, would you comfortably say you are naturally creative? And this is not to say that you're good or bad. This is to say that do you naturally consider yourself creative? I would say I'm creative. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily good at being creative, but I'm creative. So feel free to answer that question yourself. Creativity is a hard skill to learn. It's a complete different way of thinking. I would controversially say that creativity is an impossible skill to learn. So, which is why I got you to answer those questions. Do you naturally feel creative? Do you naturally feel like you like I say, interact and engage with the world on a creative level? Because there is very little I can tell you or point you in a direction of to begin to see the world in that creative way. So the natural talent, the natural ability to be creative is unfortunately something that you cannot learn. So if you're not already thinking about it, you might try a few things to discover that, and actually we'll get into that in this presentation. But it might be something that if you're not already doing so, then it's going to be an uphill battle to try and learn creativity. You can certainly learn technical skills, and God, I've seen designers who have got the technical skills to do these things, but they don't necessarily have that creative mindset. So creativity is definitely a good one, but it's something, unfortunately, you cannot teach. I don't think you can teach. Certain things you can teach are fundamental design principles. Now, these are often what I say is a gift. As a creative person, you are sensitive to these things. You're sensitive to these ideas. You might not be able to put a word on it. You might not be able to say, this thing that I'm talking about is this, or this thing I'm talking about is that, and be able to articulate what it is that you're talking about, or more specifically what you're feeling. But they can be learned, and talent aside, if you still want to pursue in a creative field, then maybe talent is something you can't pick up, but these are certainly something you can begin to articulate. These terms would be good for producers as well, where you're not being creative, you haven't got your hands dirty in the creation, but you can articulate to your team. So these are great to learn and understand. So these are the fundamental design principles, and I fully recommend, whether you're creative or not, you hone and understand these points, these principles. And they're broken up into two parts. The first is the principle of design. The principles of design is one area that you can hone. And the first one is tension and balance. A feeling of balance results when the elements of design are arranged symmetrically or asymmetrically to create the impression of equality, weight, and importance. So here we have an example here. You can see that there's an element. I mean, given the screen real estate, I wish I could add another row of circles into this, but there's an idea that the let's say 9 for argument's sake. There's 9 circles there. The 9 circles feel the same size and weight and have the same importance as the one big circle. So that's tension, that's balance. There's just a harmony, but not to use the word harmony. There is a sense that they are of equal importance. Pattern is the regular arrangement of alternative or repeated elements, shapes, line, colors, motifs. Repetition. Pattern is what it is, and this doesn't necessarily mean right in front of you, that repeated pattern. This understanding that there's a repeated pattern. Let's say, for example, on a website, there is a repeating pattern happening between web pages or something like that. There's a recognition of repetition, of pattern. Emphasis, and again, this can be done in many ways. Special attention or importance given to one part of a work of art. For example, dark shade on a light composition. Emphasis can be achieved through placement, contrast, color, size, repetition, and relates to focal points. So here you can see we've given emphasis on the circle using color. There's no other emphasis given other than color, and that's done in 2 ways. It's done with a singular color on the background, if we want to call it that, but it's also given on a blue in the blue circle to draw it out, to give emphasis. And we can do this with size. They could be all the same color, but we've done this with size. Emphasis is just to give importance or to give a focal point to a piece of art. Proportion, scale, the relationship between objects with respect to size, number, and so on, including the relation between parts of a whole. So as you can see here, we've got a small square, we've got a big square. It's just understanding that there is proportion, there is scale given to the smaller into the bigger one. They are the same shape, they're just the scale is different. So you could use that terminology to, you could say something like scale it up, Harmony, the arrangement of elements to give the viewer the feeling that all the parts form a coherent whole. So even though this is one big square circle with multiple smaller circles around it, you feel like they belong together. This could be a flower, let's say, for example. You feel like they belong together, even though they are disparate or they are physically detached. They do form part of a whole. There is harmony. There's cohesion between the elements. Rhythm, movement, the use of recurring elements to direct the movement of the eye through the artwork. There are 5 kinds of rhythm: random, regular, alternative, progressive, and flowing. The way the elements are organized to lead the eye to the focal area movement, the way the elements are organized to lead the eye to the focal area. Movement can be directed, for example, along the edges by means of shape and color. So this is an interesting one because you can do that again. You can do this in a variety of ways. I love there's a comic book example out there where you are using elements of let's take, for example, a square of a comic. Let's take, for example, the squares of a comic cell, I think they call them, and the way that you can have disparate objects like sort of quite far away from each other, and then as you read from left to right, they become more intense. And what that's doing is it's encouraging your eye to start in the, I guess, easy part. It's encouraging your eye to start on the left hand side and work its way into the crescendo, as it were. Using rhythm, using movement to really draw the eye to a focal area. In a similar way, emphasis instantly draws your eye. This is a way to use movement to translate or transition your focus to a point. Contrast, I think this is the most commonly used term, the juxtaposition of different elements of design, for example, rough and smooth, textures, dark and light values, in order to highlight the differences or create a visual interest or focal point. So yeah, in this example, we've got white and we've got black. They're very different. And again, you can do this with many, many different ways, rough and smooth, all this kind of stuff. It's to show that disparity. You might use the term, these two elements contrast each other to demonstrate that they are different, to demonstrate that they are opposites of each other. So the second area of the fundamentals is the elements of design. Now, these are probably things that people find more familiar with. So you've got lines, horizontal, vertical, diagonal, curved, straight, dotted, broken, thick, thin, line. I think everyone's familiar with this. I don't think we need to explain too much about this. Shape, two-dimensional shape. So squares, circles, oval, triangles, and then organic would be anything else, but in a two-dimensional way. Form is similar to the previous one, but this is three-dimensional shapes. So in geometric, you've got cubes, spheres, and cones, a 3D shape, or organic, like people, me, animals, tables, things that don't follow any kind of a rigid form. But they have depth. They have 3D. Color. There's the color wheel here. Refers to wavelengths of light. Refers to hue, which is the name of the color. It could be yellow, red, that's the hue. The value, which is lightness or darkness. As you can see on the color wheel here, we've got a dark, if we take red, for example, at the top, you've got the dark red, and then towards the bottom, you've got the light red. So that's I guess, increasing the lightness or transitioning from dark to light in the same hue. Intensity, which is saturation, the amount of pigment, and temperature, so warm and cool. So you can see here the color wheel goes from a red, which is hot, and as we go clockwise, it goes to a cooler sort of color spectrum, or hue, as we just learned, and relates to tint, tone, and shade. We've actually written a really in-depth article on color theory, and it does go into the sort of the basics of color. So I would suggest that you check out our blog to take a look at that. Texture, here we have a rocky circle. The feel, appearance, thickness, or stickiness of a surface. For example, rough, smooth, silky, furry. So yeah, texture is kind of self-explanatory there. Space, the area around, within, between images or parts of an image, relates to perspective, positive or negative space. And this can be an interesting one, because you could look at this. The actual shapes here are two semicircles. But you could also look at you could focus on the negative space and say, well, is this an hourglass or something like that? There is form, there is something within the negative space that we can our mind is putting relevance to. So and you can create that with perspective, with playing with different shapes. So the third key skill, I think, to make a good designer is technical skill. And this is quite simply learn Photoshop. Not really, there's a lot more to it than that, but learning Photoshop, learning some form of technical skill so that you can take your talent, take your creativity, and actually apply it to some form of medium. So I've broken these up into different competencies, which I feel form part of technical skills. To have these skills will encourage and bolster your technical skills. So the first one is computer literacy, and this is essentially understanding how to use a computer and understanding how a computer works. You know, knowing about shortcuts, knowing about different RAM. You know, if you're a designer, you're going to need a lot of RAM. You know, not necessarily a lot of processor speed or whatever. It's just understanding the computer as a tool, and not having the computer be a barrier to your creativity. Whether that's understanding how to do research on Google, you know, using the tools to the best of your ability. And I always think we should be improving our computer literary skills. I learned to touch type because my thoughts weren't getting down as quickly as I'd like, so I learned to touch type. I think this can be really powerful in a very subtle way to improve your design capability, because the tool is out the way. The tool, you're not worrying about the computer. The computer is doing its thing, and you're leveraging your expertise and your knowledge of how a computer works. Photoshop, Illustrator is what I call digital art is a digital art competency, and you know there are many out there. Sketch, Affinity. There's plenty of tools, digital art tools out there, but obviously we're all familiar with Photoshop and Illustrator. So just for an example, understanding how these tools work, again, how to set up a tool space, what the different tools do, just being comfortable within the software. Before you even start creating, you already sort of know the software. You know, obviously that comes hand in hand with learning. You obviously want to apply your learning to creating a bit of art, but really being curious and inquisitive about what the tool can do for you, so it doesn't get in the way. Medium competency, kind of coming away from digital now. Medium competency is understanding the medium of art, of digital, and the medium of print, and how they differ. And as with say Photoshop or Illustrator, digital and print is obviously something you can specialize in. You can specialize in doing print, and really understanding that there are different. The color responds in a very different way in print. You need to think of things in a very, very different way. DPI and all that kind of stuff. Understanding that. If you want to focus on digital, for example, I would certainly just explore and begin to understand what print has to offer. In the same way, digital, if you want to focus on if you want to focus on print, understanding how digital affects your what you can learn and what you can understand, having that appreciation. So again, you might not want to specialize, but you can certainly appreciate, understand, and draw in from those experiences. So medium competency is another key competency, I would say, falls under this umbrella. And then finally, drawing skills. Now, this is quite common that people think that you just to be creative means you need to be able to draw. I personally don't think you need to be able to draw to be a creative or a designer. I think understanding techniques and understanding how to use a pen and paper and I think it's deeper than the physical action of drawing. I think it's the translation of thought to something or a piece of paper. You know, it could be a thought to the machine. So that's where I feel like understanding how to draw, or understanding that process of thought to something, is what I call physical art competency. And there's no better way to learn that or understand that with actually drawing or painting or sculpting. The physical art not the physical art, the actual physical art doesn't really matter. It's like I say, that thought process, that transition from thought to the outside world. And understanding the nuances of that you can apply to your digital competency. So the final one now is the business of design, and this is a big one because the business of design is something that is completely overlooked by designers. And if you want to get into design, I would absolutely 100% make sure you understand the business of design. Whether you're in full-time or whether you are freelancer or whether you're growing your own company, understanding these principles are going to excel you. They're going to separate you from being a commodity, just a foot soldier, a designer. They're going to excel you into a design machine, let's say that. So these are just some of the areas really that I would consider as a business of design. You've got organization, how to organize your day, how to organize yourself, how to organize others. Problem solving, which we'll get into in a bit. Solutionizing, so you're given a problem and you're able to think creatively, think abstractly about solving that problem. Negotiation, and this can be whether you're in an end of year review, if you're in a full-time employment, or whether you are trying to make a sale. Understanding the art of negotiation is to understand people and psychology and things like that. I think you're only able to progress in your career if you really understand the psychology of human interaction. Sales, again, full-time employment, you're selling yourself, understanding how you appeal to your employer, to work your way up, to navigate your way through the professional industry, and again, as a freelancer, to make that sale, to get someone on the phone and make a sale to them, to hire you. And then marketing, which is a beast in itself. Not sure how maybe this applies to full-time employment, but it's certainly something that it's one of those things you've got to bite the bullet. You might be a great designer, but unless you're able to market yourself effectively, then no one's going to hear about you. So marketing is unfortunately one of those things. You might enjoy marketing, but for me, it's an unfortunate thing that you've got to learn to market yourself. So let's deep dive into problem solving right now. What problem are you solving? So Jeff I. Richards says creativity or creative without strategy is called art. And for the longest time, we as a company were producing art. There was no foundational understanding to what it was we were producing. It was us saying, we like this, we think this works, we've done a bit of research. There was no fundamental underlying reason for being, and that's when we made the shift into brand strategy, because what brand strategy enabled us to do was to really understand the problem and try and diagnose the problem we're trying to solve, and draw distinctions with the art that we were creating, and saying these are the reasons why we made this choice. Whether it be customers, whether it be business goals, it's just understanding the problem that you're trying to solve. And again, whether you're in full time, if your team lead, it just tells you to do this thing, or your producer or whatever tells you to do that thing, you're questioning them and saying, okay, why are we doing this? Why are we understand? What are we trying to achieve there? Because believe it or not, as a creative, as a designer, you have expertise. You have a perspective that some people just do not have. Being hands-on, being down and dirty in the tools, you have a perspective. So bring that perspective to the surface by challenging what problem are we trying to solve here, and that really where your design career will flourish. I think the common misconception is that you need to learn how to be creative, but personally, I think creativity is a talent that you just have. You can hone it with the skills we talked about previously, but then this is where it really comes to the surface. What problem are you solving? So with all that said, what's next? What can you do if you're at day zero and you are wanting to be a designer? So I've put together just some resources that I think there are plenty out there. There's plenty out there, but here's a few resources that I think would be very helpful in you becoming a designer, a very rounded designer. So How To by Michael Beirut. This book really is your best chance of understanding graphic design, understanding what we call talent, understanding how you can, like as the book says, use graphic design to sell things, explain things, and what the role of graphic design is on the world as we see it today. Creative strategy in the business of design is again going into that business strategy realm. This is great. It really draws the distinction between the business side and the graphic design side, and gives you practical use cases and how you can apply those things. And it teaches you the terminology. It teaches you how to think a bit more in a business-like way. And like I say, these can be applied to not just if you're a freelancer, but also if you are in your career. understanding what bigger role can you have as a designer that's bigger than just, head in the design. It can really help you, whether you might find it boring, and a lot of people do, but you should find it just infinitely helpful to understand this stuff. Designinspiration.com. Look what's out there, understand what's out there. Pick it apart. Is it good? Is it bad? What would you do better? Design Inspiration is a great place for just going out there, seeing what is out there, but also, as the name suggests, getting inspiration for your design. There'll be plenty of books on this as well, but great. What's the quote? Great designers create. Excellent designers steal, or something along those lines. It's understanding what is already out there, what's working well, what are conventions that people understand. It's very unlikely you're going to be a life-changing graphic designer with a completely new style. Understand what's out there, use what's out there, learn what's out there, especially at the beginning. If you want to learn how to create art on Photoshop, copy someone else's. Don't try and keep something or create something from scratch. And finally, and next is the School Rocks, which is a online learning platform for creatives, and they talk a lot about a business, how to grow a creative business. But there's also a lot of typography courses and things like that. A lot of stuff is for free on their YouTube. So there's hours and hours and hours of content that you can download and understand and start to hone your creative skills as well as your business skills, and forming those two things. And then finally is Behance, understanding, again, Behance as an inspiration tool, but also as a graphic designer, you should be putting your work out there. There are many ways to do so. Behance is just one example. Instagram is another. Dribbble is another. But this idea that you need to get your work out there. A bit of bonus advice, like if anyone wants to hire you and they're telling you this is great for your portfolio, it is not great for your portfolio to do any kind of free work. If you're getting paid, great. But what employers want to see is that you are creating. And if your Behance is full of concept work, then so be it. Because you are going out there, you're taking your initiative, you're going out there, you're honing your craft, whether it's for clients or not. Sometimes clients don't even care that you've worked for other clients. Some of them do, some of them don't. If they can see a really consistent portfolio on Behance or LinkedIn or Instagram, if they can see that consistency, if they can see that you're great at illustration, then they're going to hire you. It doesn't matter if it was a design, if it was for a client or anything like that. So these are my recommended resources that I would take as a next step. So that's it. I hope this was really helpful to you, and I hope if you're just starting your journey as a designer, or if you're feeling a bit lost in your career, I hope this can. I hope this really just sort of narrows the focus a little bit with those simple competencies, with the simple 4-step process to being a creative. So I've been Samuel Gregory, and thanks for tuning into this webcast or webinar. I don't know what it's called. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.